My son's scars terrified his bully, but they destroyed the bully's father when he saw them. I used to think scars were just healed wounds, quiet proof that the worst was over. But the scars on my son's body did not behave that way. They followed us into classrooms, grocery stores, birthday parties, all the places where other children's skin was allowed to be a background. I never imagined those same scars would drag a buried sin out of another man's chest and make him face the night he tried to leave us behind. There are children who enter a room like a question, loud and bright, demanding an answer from everyone they meet. And then there is my son Noah, who walks into every space like an apology. He does not mean to. It is just what happens when a child learns too early that people stare before they listen. On weekday mornings, the house wakes up in layers. The kettle starts whispering on the stove. The old clock in the hallway clears its throat with each tick. The light in the kitchen arrives slow and gentle, crawling up the cabinets, resting on the cereal boxes that have become a kind of wallpaper in our lives. I am always up first, not because I am a morning person, but because worry has its own alarm that does not care what time you went to sleep. I spread peanut butter on bread the way Noah likes it, all the way to the crust so there are no dry corners. I slice the apple thin because biting into whole apples still hurts his jaw when the weather changes. These are small accommodations, the quiet calibrations of a life built around old injuries. He does not know how often I notice them. That is something mothers keep to themselves, along with the fear that the world will not be as gentle as the kitchen where we rehearse his courage each day. The bathroom door creaks open down the hall. I can tell it is him by the pattern of his footsteps, light but deliberate. He is 12 now, old enough to have opinions about his haircut, his sneakers, the way his backpack straps sit on his shoulders. But when it comes to shirts, there is no discussion. Long sleeves. Always. Even in June, when the air outside feels like it is trying to sit on your chest, Noah's arms remain covered. He walks into the kitchen in his school uniform, and that same navy hoodie he has worn so often the cuffs look like chewed paper. His hair sticks up at the back, a soft rebellion against gravity. There is sleep still clinging to his eyes. "Morning," he mumbles, sliding into the chair at the table that faces away from the window. He chooses it every time. The one angle from which he does not have to see his reflection in the glass. "Good morning, love," I say, placing the plate in front of him. "You have history today, remember? Quiz on ancient Egypt." He groans softly and reaches for his sandwich. "They did not even have proper medicine," he says, as if this is an argument against the entire curriculum. "They used honey and prayers." "Sometimes that is all people have," I answer, without meaning to make it about anything else. He pauses, the crust halfway to his mouth, and looks at me with that quick assessing glance he has inherited from me. He knows when my words are carrying more than they are saying. But instead of asking, he just nods. There are questions he has learned to wrap up and store away like winter clothes. I catch a glimpse of his wrists as he reaches for his glass of milk. The sleeves ride up just enough to show a sliver of pale, shiny skin, the uneven texture that does not belong on a child. My chest tightens. The scars start there and travel up. A map of that night written in tissue and memory. The doctors told me they would fade with time and growth. They did not know that some scars learn to grow with you. There is a photo on the fridge of Noah at 4 years old, taken before. His cheeks were still round with babyhood, and his smile took up half his face. Sometimes I catch him looking at it like you might look at an old house you can never live in again. He does not remember that body, but his bones do. "Mom," he says suddenly. "Yes. Can you sign the permission slip? It is for the pool trip in June. They gave it out yesterday." He pulls a crumpled paper from his backpack and smooths it on the table. My hand hovers over it for a second. The image arrives uninvited in my mind, a pool full of children, their bodies bare as questions, the water catching every mark, every difference. I swallow. "Are you sure you want to go?" I ask carefully. He shrugs without looking up. "Everyone is going," he says. It is a simple sentence, but I hear the weight in it. He is not asking for permission to swim, he is asking for permission to belong. Pick up the pen. The ink leaves my name in careful loops at the bottom of the page. There it is, I think. My consent for the world to see what we have both been trying to manage in private. He folds the paper again too quickly, as if he does not want to give me time to change my mind. On the walk to school, The wind is sharper than the weather report promised. It sneaks into the spaces between buildings under collars through stitching. Noah zips his hoodie all the way up to his chin. I walk half a step behind him, the way I always do now, like a shadow that is trying not to smother the person it is following. When he was younger, he would hold my hand on this walk. His small fingers would swing our arms in a rhythm only he understood. After the accident, after the months in hospital, when we finally came home, he clung to me so tightly I worried he would never let go. Now his hands live in his pockets, his shoulders square against the cold and against something else I cannot name. We pass Mrs. Klein from number 23, out walking her dog in a coat that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. She gives us that particular kind of smile people reserve for children who look brave in ways they do not want to ask about. "How is our little hero?" she coos, as if the label is a bandage. Noah's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. He nods once. Noah's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. He nods once. "Fine," he says. I thank her, make a joke about homework, keep moving. Only when we turn the corner do I let out the breath I had been holding. Hero. Survivor. Miracle. People love those words because they make tragedy sound like a story you can close after the last page. They do not think about what it means for a child to grow up with a label that never asked if it could sit on his shoulders. At the school gate, the air changes. It always does. The quiet murmur of our two-person world gives way to the loud collage of other lives. Backpacks thud on benches. Laughter cracks open the morning. Somebody drops a pencil case. It explodes into color on the concrete. Parents hover in small clusters, exchanging weather reports and weekend plans. Noah slows down. His spine straightens just a little more. I can see him pulling pieces of himself inward, like a turtle retreating into its shell. This is the part of the day that still feels like a cliff to both of us, even after years of practice. A group of boys near the bike rack are shoving each other in that way that sits right on the border between play and something sharper. One of them, taller, broader, already wearing the beginnings of the man he will become, glances over as we approach. His eyes flick briefly to Noah's covered arms, then to his face. There is a quick spark there, a kind of curiosity that makes me uneasy. "Do you want me to walk you in?" I ask, keeping my tone light. He shakes his head. "I am not in kindergarten, Mom," he mutters, but there is no real annoyance, just the automatic reflex of someone who knows what is expected of a 12-year-old boy. I nod. "Okay. I will see you this afternoon. Text me if you need anything." He hesitates, then does something he has not done in months. He leans forward and gives me a quick, awkward half-hug, his arms barely wrapping around me. It is so fast I might have missed it if I was not waiting for any sign that he still needed me in ways the world could not see. "Bye," he says, pulling back. "Bye," I whisper, but he has already turned away. I watch him walk through the gate, watch the way he navigates the crowd, always choosing the spaces between. He passes the group of boys. The tall one nudges his friend and says something I cannot hear. They both laugh, but not the good kind of laugh. The kind that has teeth. For a moment, Noah's shoulders hunch, then he keeps going. He disappears into the building, swallowed by painted brick and rules and bells that ring whether you are ready or not. On the way back home, I replay the small details the way other people replay songs. The way his fingers trembled slightly as he opened his lunchbox yesterday. The way he stands in the mirror before school, checking that his sleeves cover everything, adjusting and readjusting until the fabric sits just right. The way he froze last week when a new boy in his class reached out to pat him on the back and accidentally brushed against the raised skin underneath. There is a part of me that lives permanently in that hospital corridor from 6 years ago, pacing outside the operating theater, counting my breaths in sets of 10 so I would not shatter. The smell of antiseptic still visits me sometimes in dreams, and I wake up tasting metal. The surgeon had emerged hours later, his face lined with the weight of what he had done and what he almost could not do. He had told me my son was alive, that the burns were bad but not unbeatable, that scars would remain. "He is a strong boy," the surgeon had said, his voice gentle. "Children are resilient." It is a comforting sentence people use when they do not want to look directly at the price of survival. I did not know then that I would spend years negotiating between resilience and the reality of a child who flinches when someone raises their voice. That afternoon, the phone rings just after 2:30. slicing through the quiet of the living room where the laundry waits in resigned piles. I glance at the clock. School does not end for another hour. This is Noah's mother, I say, the old dread already rising before the voice on the other end introduces herself. Hello, this is Mrs. Jenkins, the vice principal at Oakwood, the woman says. Her tone is polite, professional, carrying that practice calm educators use when they call parents with news they are not sure how to deliver. My grip tightens on the phone. The room suddenly feels too small. Is everything okay? I ask. There is a microscopic pause. Physically, yes, she replies. But there was an incident today. Another student, some unkind behavior. We think it would be best if you could come in this afternoon to discuss it. Unkind behavior. The phrase hangs there, too light for what my stomach is already telling me. I will be there, I say, my voice coming out steadier than I feel. As I hang up, my eyes drift to the photo on the fridge again. The boy without scars. The boy who did not yet know how cruel curiosity can be. I touch the edge of the picture with my fingertips, as if I can reach through it and pull some of that untouched innocence back into our present. Outside, a car passes, music thumping faintly through the glass. Somewhere down the street, a dog barks at nothing. The world carries on, unaware that in a small office at Oakwood Middle School, something has already begun to crack open. I reach for my keys, for my coat, for the part of myself that has learned how to walk into meetings where my child's pain is discussed in bullet points. Today will be different. I do not know how yet, but I can feel it in the way my heart is beating faster and heavier, as if it is trying to warn me that we are moving toward a moment we cannot walk back from. I close the door behind me and head for the school, completely unaware that the boy who hurt my son will not be the only one I confront today, and that the scars on Noah's body are about to pull a stranger's past into the light. There is a particular hush inside a school building during the late afternoon, the kind that settles once most of the children have already spilled out into sunlight and buses. It is not true silence, schools never truly go quiet, but more of a tired exhale. Doors shut softly. A distant laugh echoes in a hallway that will soon forget it. Papers shuffle behind office windows where adults talk in tired tones about test scores and behavioral forms. As I walk in, that hush folds around me like a familiar, unwelcome blanket. The receptionist at the front desk looks up with a stiff smile that tries to be reassuring but lands somewhere closer to polite urgency. Hi, are you Noah's mom? She asks, even though I am the only person in the lobby, and worry is practically written across my face. Yes, I say. She nods almost sympathetically. Mrs. Jenkins is expecting you. Down the hall, second door. I thank her, though I do not feel grateful. My palms are cold. My breath sits too high in my chest. Every step toward that office feels heavier, as if the floor is trying to tell me to turn back, that what waits behind the door will rearrange something in me. The door to the vice principal's office is slightly ajar. I knock lightly and step inside when I hear a soft "come in." Mrs. Jenkins stands from behind her desk, a woman in her late 50s with silver-streaked hair pulled into a bun that is too tight for the gentleness her eyes try to convey. She motions for me to sit. There is a second chair beside mine, empty for now. We're still waiting for the other parent, she explains. But I wanted to speak with you first. The word other has become a warning bell in my life. Other parent, other student, other story. It always means something has collided with my son again. What happened? I ask, my voice quieter than I intended. She exhales through her nose, a polite sigh softened around the edges. There was an incident during lunch, she begins. Noah was approached by another student, Kyle Thompson. There was some teasing that escalated. Kyle said some unkind things and attempted to pull Noah's sleeve. My jaw tightens instinctively. He tried to pull his sleeve off? Yes, she confirms. It appears he was trying to see what Noah was hiding underneath. When Noah pushed him away, Kyle called him. She hesitates. He used the word monster. The word hangs between us, sharp as broken glass. I feel the air leave my lungs in one long shaky exhale. Monster, I repeat, tasting bitterness, anger, and something darker that the English language does not politely name. I'm so sorry, she says, and I believe she means it. But apologies from administrators can only soothe so much when the wound belongs to a child who already carries more wounds than he should. Where is Noah now? I ask. He's with the counselor. He's shaken but physically fine. That phrase physically fine sits sour but physically fine. That phrase physically fine sits sour in my stomach. So much of his life has been measured by that single metric. Before I can respond, a sharp knock interrupts the moment. Mrs. Jenkins straightens, smoothing her skirt, and calls, "Come in." The door opens and a tall man steps inside. He fills the doorway in a way that makes the frame seem inadequate. Broad shoulders beneath a charcoal coat, dark hair flecked with the first threads of gray. His jaw is strong, his expression unreadable. A mask of practiced stoicism. He removes his coat slowly, as if stalling for time, then folds it over his arm with precision. "This is Mr. Thompson," Mrs. Jenkins says. "Kyle's father." He nods in my direction, polite but distant, as though he's entering a business meeting, not a confrontation about children and cruelty. "Thank you for coming," she adds. He clears his throat. His voice is smooth, controlled, the kind that has spent years giving instructions that are meant to be obeyed. "Of course. I was told my son was involved in an issue." Issue. The word stings. Some adults treat bullying like a scheduling inconvenience. "Yes," Mrs. Jenkins replies carefully, "and we're hoping to resolve it constructively." He glances at me, then at the desk, then back at her. He still hasn't sat down. "There was unkind behavior," she continues, including attempts to pull at another student's clothing. His jaw shifts. Something flickers across his face, but it is gone before it can be named. "Kyle knows better," he says flatly. "I'll deal with it." That tone, "I'll deal with it," carries meanings I do not like. It has echoes of raised voices behind closed doors. "He also used hurtful language," she adds gently. "What kind of language?" I speak before she can. "He called my son a monster." His head snaps toward me so quickly that something almost cracks in the air. His brows lift, not in defense of his child, but with a tightness I can't read. Shock? Shame? Something older? Heavier? Before the moment can settle, Mrs. Jenkins stands. "I think it may help," she says carefully, "if we allow both students to be present for a mediated conversation." I hesitate. Noah hates confrontation. But she must see the fear in my eyes because she adds, "We won't force anything. Noah will not have to speak if he doesn't want to." I nod once. She steps out to retrieve the boys. The room grows still. I can hear faint sounds from down the hallway, footsteps, a locker slamming, the distant hum of children outside. Mr. Thompson stands with his coat still folded over his arm, posture straight, eyes fixed on nothing. For a moment, we are two adults standing on opposite sides of a small battlefield, waiting for the children to return carrying the evidence of impact. He clears his throat again, almost awkwardly this time. "Look," he says in a low voice meant for me alone. "I'm sure your son is a good kid. Kyle can be impulsive." Impulsive. Another polite word to cushion aggression. "My son isn't the problem," I say quietly but firmly. He flinches at that, as if unprepared for pushback, but he nods anyway, his eyes dropping to the floor. He presses two fingers to his temple, massaging the skin there as if a headache is rising. "You said your son," I counter, "called mine a monster. That's not impulsive. That's intentional." His eyes meet mine, and for a fraction of a second I see something raw flicker there. Pain? Recognition? Guilt layered so deeply it has developed its own muscle memory? He opens his mouth to respond, but the door swings open before he can. Noah steps in first. His shoulders are hunched. His fists are balled inside his sleeves. His eyes dart to me, then down to the floor. Behind him shuffles a boy slightly taller, broader, a 13-year-old with the early posture of a bully, chin high, arms stiff, mouth awkwardly defiant. Kyle. His father rests a hand on his shoulder, guiding him gently but firmly inside. The boy refuses to look at me or Noah. His face is flushed. Whether from shame or anger I cannot tell. "Sit, boys," Mrs. Jenkins says softly. They obey, two chairs pulled beside each other but miles apart emotionally. For a moment no one speaks. Then Mrs. Jenkins kneels between them, her voice gentle. "Noah, Kyle, do either of you want to share what happened today?" Noah shakes his head slightly, his eyes still trained downward. Kyle's jaw works. He shifts in his seat, his father's hand tightens on his shoulder. The boy inhales sharply and mumbles, He He wouldn't show us what was under his sleeve. Everyone wanted to know. It's weird. Weird. The word slides into me like a dull blade. So you tried to pull it up? She asks. Kyle shrugs, avoiding her eyes. It wasn't. I just wanted to see. And the name you used? I add quietly. His cheeks burn red. I was joking. No joke sounded like that. Noah whispers so quietly I almost miss it. His voice trembles at the edges, stretched thin from holding itself together. Kyle's eyes flick toward him for the first time, and something uncertain crosses his expression, a small startled glimpse of humanity. Mrs. Jenkins nods gently. Noah, sweetheart, do you want to show us what you were protecting? Only if you choose to. And then the moment happens, the moment that will split our past from everything that comes after. Noah shakes his head. But then he sees the look on Kyle's face. Mocking, dismissive, that smirk children wear when they think they have won some small cruel game. Noah inhales. His hand trembles. Slowly, painfully, he grips the edge of his sleeve. Only the forearm. He murmurs to me, barely audible. My throat tightens. Only if you want to, I remind him. But he nods, tiny, determined, and then he lifts the fabric. The room shifts. The world tilts. There, beneath the sleeve, is the raised map of his past, the twisted, silvery lines, the patches of warped skin, the evidence of fire and fear and the night that almost took him from me. The scars. They catch the office light like a river of old suffering. Kyle recoils, a small gasp escaping him. Mrs. Jenkins' hand flies to her chest. But Mr. Thompson. His reaction is different. He goes absolutely still. Not shocked. Not confused. Not horrified. No, he freezes the way a man freezes when he sees a ghost wearing the skin of the living. His coat slips from his arm and hits the floor without a sound. His face drains of color. His knees buckle slightly as if the ground has shifted beneath him. His eyes, wide, hollow, flooded with memory, lock onto the exact pattern of Noah's scars. And then he whispers, barely audible but unmistakable. Oh God. Not again. Not again. The phrase chills the air. It is not the reaction of a stranger. It is the reaction of someone who recognizes what he should not recognize. My breath catches in my throat, because in that moment I realize, he's not reacting to the injury. He is reacting to the memory of it. And whatever secret lives behind his eyes. It knows exactly where those scars came from. For a long moment, no one in that small office breathes. Not Noah. Not Kyle. Not even Mrs. Jenkins, whose hands hover near her throat like she's forgotten where they belong. But the stillness centers itself around one person, Mr. Thompson, who looks less like a grown man and more like someone who has just been dropped back into the worst moment of his life. His eyes are locked on Noah's scars, wide and vacant, like a door he's been holding shut for years has been kicked open without warning. His face folds inward, confusion tightening into disbelief bending toward something deeper and darker. Guilt. Real old bone-deep guilt. The kind that grows roots. No, he whispers under his breath. No, this can't be happening. His voice fractures on the last word. Kyle looks up at him in confusion, suddenly too young, too small to understand why his father has turned to stone beside him. Dad, the boy says. It's barely a question. More like a plea. His father doesn't answer. His focus is pinned to my child's arm like the scars themselves are speaking to him, dragging him backward into a memory he's tried everything to outrun. I rise slowly from my chair, protective instinct rising in me like heat. Noah's sleeve is still pushed up, his arm trembling faintly from exposure, physical and emotional. Instinctively, I reach to cover him again. But Mr. Thompson steps back, as if the motion itself has struck him. Don't, he chokes out, raising a hand. Please don't cover it. Not yet. I freeze. The room freezes with me. Even Mrs. Jenkins looks confused. Sir, I'm not sure I understand. He swallows hard. His throat works like each breath is fighting its way past something heavy. Then he runs both hands through his hair and begins pacing, a sharp, desperate rhythm that doesn't match his earlier calm. I've seen those scars, he finally manages. I know those scars. I feel Noah's body tense beneath my arm. He glances at me, eyes wide with fear and confusion. Kyle looks terrified now too, terrified in a way no bullying consequence has ever taught him to be. Mrs. Jenkins tries to take control of the moment. Mr. Thompson, perhaps we should. About 6 years ago, he interrupts, voice shaking now. Late evening. There was an accident. A fire. A child pulled from a burning car. My blood runs cold. Noah's breath catches. My fingers go numb. Because this man, this stranger, is talking about our night. The night that split our lives into before and after. The boy had burns across his arm, shoulder, side. He continues, speaking like someone trying to piece together broken glass without cutting himself. They brought him into the trauma center. He stops. A long, trembling silence. Then he lifts his eyes and looks directly at me, directly into me, and the truth steps out of his mouth like a confession that's been waiting years to be born. I was the surgeon who operated on your son. The air leaves my lungs all at once, as if someone has scooped the breath straight from my chest. Behind me, a buzzing sound fills the office. Fluorescent lights hum, papers rustle, someone's chair creaks. Everything in the world is making noise except the four of us frozen in the center of it. Mrs. Jenkins gasps quietly. Kyle turns and stares at his father like he's never seen him before. But the words aren't done. Mr. Thompson shakes his head, takes a shaky step backward, then forward again, fighting with himself. I didn't know he'd lived, he whispers. I never knew he survived. My stomach twists. What do you mean? I say slowly. You didn't know? He inhales sharply, almost staggering. There was chaos. Sirens. Fire crews. A man shouting. They said he'd been found unconscious at the scene. Then he died in transit. I assumed the child belonged to him. My hand flies to my mouth, because I remember that night. The smoke. The heat. The man who pulled Noah out just before collapsing. A stranger. A hero learned. They told us he was the father, Mr. Thompson continues, voice breaking. And when he died, I thought the boy had too. My knees weaken. The walls tilt. He drops into a chair as if his bones have given out. But even as the shock ripples through the room, I can't ignore the part that doesn't fit. The part that feels too sharp, too rehearsed, too convenient. If that's all, I say quietly, why did you look like you'd seen a ghost when you saw his scars? He shuts his eyes. And when he opens them, the truth steps fully into the room. Because, he breathes, voice cracking, I wasn't just the surgeon. The silence after that sentence feels like a storm waiting to explode. I was the one who caused the accident. My vision blurs. Heat rushes to my face. The room sways, then steadies, then sways again. He keeps talking, faster now, as if something inside him has broken open and everything is spilling out uncontrollably. I was driving home. I was tired. I shouldn't have been behind the wheel. The car swerved. I hit something, I didn't know what. I heard metal screaming and then flames. His voice buckles. I panicked. Called emergency services, but I didn't stay. A sound tears out of me, half gasp, half cry. I grip the edge of the chair to keep myself from collapsing. Mrs. Jenkins' face turns white as paper. Kyle recoils from his father like he's been burned himself. But Mr. Thompson keeps going. I went back later, he says, voice shaking violently. Everything was chaos. The wreckage, the fire, the medics. I didn't know a child had been in the car. I didn't know until they brought him into the operating room. His throat closes. And when he didn't die, I told myself the boy hadn't been the one I hit. I told myself the flames had caused the wreck. I told myself any lie I needed to survive. He covers his face with both hands. I've lived every day since with the weight of what I did, he chokes out. Every single day. The room is spinning so hard I can barely feel my legs. Noah is trembling beside me. I pull him into my arms, clutching him like the world is trying to take him again. Kyle stares at his father as if seeing him for the first time. Not as a protector, not as a hero, but as a man collapsing under the truth he buried. Mr. Thompson lowers his hands and looks at me, raw, undone, broken, wide open. I didn't know the child lived. His voice shatters. I didn't know he belonged to you. A beat. I didn't know the boy my son bullied was the boy I nearly killed. His voice sinks into a whisper. But the moment I saw the scars, I knew. I can't move. None of us can. Because in one moment, Everything we thought we knew about that night has been rewritten by the man who caused it. The room feels too small to hold the truth he has released. The air itself thickens, heavy with the weight of 6 years collapsing into a single breath. There is the faint buzz of the overhead lights, the distant echo of a bell signaling the last class of the day. But inside this office, time has sunk its claws into us and refuses to move. Noah's arm is still half exposed, the scars bright under the artificial light like raised paths carved by memory. I pull the sleeve down gently, my fingers trembling, as if covering him can somehow shield him from the truth that has already landed like shrapnel. But nothing protects you from a confession like that. Mr. Thompson sits hunched forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped, knuckles white. The image looks wrong on him. Men like him, tall, composed, polished, are not supposed to fold in on themselves. Not supposed to look like boys who broke something valuable and are waiting for punishment. He tries to speak, then stops, takes a breath that shakes his whole frame and tries again. "You need to understand," he says, but his voice cracks, betraying him. "I never meant, I swear to God, I never meant for anyone to get hurt." The words land like broken glass at my feet. I want to scream. I want to stand. I want to move. But my body feels rooted in a grief that has found a new shape. He hit my child. He left him in a burning car. He ran. He lied. And then he cut him open with the same hands that caused the wounds. "I should have stopped," he continues, voice unraveling. "I should have stayed." I replay that night every time I close my eyes. Every time I hear a siren. Every time my son walks out the door. His eyes flick to Kyle, and for the first time since this conversation began, there is something almost human in the boy's stare, fear, confusion, a fragile kind of dawning awareness that his father is no longer the man he thought he was. The vice principal clears her throat, a desperate attempt to steady the air. "Mr. Thompson," she says carefully, the professional calm in her voice now strained. "I think perhaps we should." "No," he snaps, then immediately softens, shaking his head. "No. I'm sorry. I don't mean to. I don't want to hide this anymore." He turns back to me. The mask is gone. What's left is a man stripped of armor, raw and terrible in his honesty. "I went back to the scene," he says, barely above a whisper. "It was dark. The fire was everywhere. The heat, God, the heat. I saw the wreckage. I saw the firefighters. I saw the stretcher covered in a sheet." He pauses, swallowing hard. "I thought, I truly believed, it was your son under that sheet." I flinch as if struck. 'Cause I remember too. The corridor. The alarms. The smell of singed hair and rubber. The doctor's voice telling me Noah was alive, but barely. "You never came forward." I say, my voice rough, scraped raw from the inside. "You never said a word. You let them think it was an accident." His eyes close. "I know. You watched the news?" I ask. "You saw the reports about a child in critical condition?" "Yes," he whispers. "And you still said nothing?" "Yes." A tremor runs through me, violent and sudden. "Why?" He doesn't hesitate this time. "Because I was a coward." The sentence hangs in the air like smoke. "I told myself I had already lost everything," he continues, voice hollow. "My career would be over. I would go to prison. My family," his voice breaks. "My family would suffer for a mistake I could never undo." He looks at his son again, and something inside him folds inward. "And then I became a surgeon," he says, softer now. "Because if I couldn't save the life I took, maybe I could save others. Maybe that could balance it somehow." He laughs once, a terrible broken sound. "But there is no balancing something like this. There is only waiting." "Waiting for what?" I ask, even though I already know. "For the truth to find me." He bows his head. "And today," he whispers, "it did." Mrs. Jenkins shifts uncomfortably in her chair, torn between the need to intervene and the need to let the truth pour out until it's finished with us. "Mr. Thompson," she says, voice trembling, This is a serious legal matter. I may need to contact." "No," I cut in, my voice sharp enough to slice through the moment. "Not yet." Everyone looks at me. Noah grips my sleeve with one hand, small but steady. I cover his fingers with mine. I stare at the man across from me, the man who has ripped open a wound I thought had scarred over long ago. "You said you thought Noah died," I say slowly. "What made you think that?" The sheet? The chaos? Or was it something else? He flinches. Hard. There was a man, he says eventually, eyes distant, voice faint. Someone who had pulled the child out of the car before I even arrived. He collapsed near the curb. They rushed him away. Someone said he was the father. My chest tightens. That stranger, the man who saved Noah. He wasn't Noah's father. He was just a passerby. A brave, nameless soul who didn't survive the smoke. So you assumed, I say quietly. Yes. You assumed the worst because it was easier. He nods once, shame carving lines into his face. And when you operated on my son, I continue, you didn't recognize him as the same child? He shakes his head. The burns, the swelling, he was unrecognizable. And afterward, I avoided the reports. I signed what I needed to sign, then took a leave. Told people it was burnout. Told myself I would make things right someday. A bitter laugh escapes me. Someday, he looks at me with eyes that have no defense left. I didn't expect someday to walk into you. His gaze shifts to Noah. Or to see the scars I put on him still living on his skin. Noah curls into me slightly, burying half his face in my sleeve. I stroke his hair gently, my hand trembling. I'm so sorry. The man whispers, and the words sound like they're being dragged from the deepest part of him. I'm so impossibly sorry. Kyle's breathing grows uneven. His chest rises and falls in quick, shallow bursts. You told me, Kyle says suddenly, voice cracking, that accidents happen. You said you're careful. You said you don't make mistakes when you drive. His father's lips part, but no words come out. You lied to me, the boy says, louder this time, pain surfacing in jagged edges. You said I should never hide things from you. But you, his voice breaks. You hid this. Son, Mr. Thompson tries, but Kyle shakes his head violently. No, the boy yells, voice high and frightened. You hurt that kid. You hurt him and you didn't even tell anyone. The room shakes with the force of it. I didn't know how, his father says, voice raw, desperate. I didn't. You should have told someone. Kyle screams. You should have told me. His father looks gutted. Mrs. Jenkins stands quickly. Kyle, she says gently, why don't you step outside for a moment? I'll ask Mr. Lewis to sit with you. But Kyle doesn't move. His eyes are locked on Noah, on the scars he mocked, on the truth he didn't know he was stepping into. I didn't know, he whispers. I didn't know it was real. No one should know. Noah murmurs back, voice trembling but honest. I didn't want people to. Kyle's face twists, not in cruelty this time, but in shame so sharp it almost looks like grief. Mr. Thompson reaches out a hand toward his son, but the boy steps backward, away from him. And the man who once seemed too composed to ever breaks. He crumples inward, head bowed, tears sliding down the edges of his face. Not loud sobs. Quiet ones. The kind that don't ask for permission. The kind that come when truth finally demands payment. He whispers again, I didn't know he lived. And then, I didn't know he would grow into a boy my son would hurt. And finally, I didn't know someday would be today. When truth enters a room, it does not announce itself with thunder. It arrives quieter, like a draft under a closed door, like the soft turning of hinges that no one oiled. But once inside, it expands until it fills every corner, leaving no space untouched. In that small office at Oakwood Middle School, truth had taken its seat, and now it wanted answers. No one moves at first. The silence feels shapeless, thick with the grief of three different people who have just learned that the past is not finished with them. Noah presses his forehead against my arm. The motion small and instinctive, like he's trying to return to a place where the world still made sense. I place a hand on his back, feeling every shallow breath he's pulling in. Across from us, Mr. Thompson sits with his shoulders slumped forward, staring at the floor, tears slipping down without resistance. The man who looked like a pillar an hour ago now looks like a monument ruined by weather. And beside him, his son Kyle keeps blinking as if trying to wake himself from a nightmare. His face is pale, his lips trembling with words he doesn't yet know how to speak. Finally, Mrs. Jenkins breaks the silence. Her hands tremble slightly as she folds them on the desk. I think we should take a moment, she says quietly, her voice stripped of administration and protocol. A moment to breathe. but breathing feels like swimming through concrete. I need to speak. I say, my voice hoarse but steady. Before anything else happens. Mr. Thompson lifts his head slowly. His eyes are red, but he does not look away. I look at him, at the man who is both savior and destroyer, the man whose hands once held my son's life, who stitched him back together, who also tore the world apart before that night even began. I have imagined that night 1,000 times. I begin. The crash. The fire. The man who pulled Noah out. The ambulance. The surgery. I made peace with not having all the answers. I made peace with the fact that life just happens that way sometimes. My throat tightens as old memories rush back, memories I thought I had packed away carefully enough to stop them from spilling. But today, I continue. You put the missing pieces in front of me without asking permission. And now I have to decide what to do with them. He nods slowly, painfully. Whatever you decide, he says, voice breaking. I accept it. I shake my head faintly. I don't even know what decide means yet. A long shaky breath leaves me. I thought once Noah survived, the worst was behind us. But you? I pause, looking him in the eye. You lived your life knowing that night was unfinished. He closes his eyes, tears pressing out again. I know. You hid it. I did. You walked into that hospital and you saved my child, I say, voice trembling, while believing you were saving him from yourself. He nods, shame written in every line of his posture. I didn't operate to erase what I did, he whispers. I operated because I didn't think I deserved to walk away from that table, unless I gave him every chance at life. His face crumples. I didn't think I deserved to look elsewhere. Noah lifts his head then, just barely. His eyes still wet flick between us. You did the surgery? He asks, voice soft as paper. Mr. Thompson's breath catches. He looks at the boy, his own hands trembling now in his lap. Yes, he whispers. I tried my best to fix what I ruined. And I failed in some ways. I know that. But I tried. The boy stares at him, silent, stretching. Then, you hurt me, Noah says. It's not accusation. It's not anger. It's truth. Simple. Raw. Undeniable. Mr. Thompson bows his head. I know. And I am so sorry. And you saved me, Noah adds, confusion clouding his face. Yes, the man breathes. I tried to. The boy swallows hard, then leans into me again, overwhelmed by the impossibility of the two truths sitting side by side. Mrs. Jenkins wipes her eyes discreetly and clears her throat. We are entering territory that is far beyond school discipline, she says gently. But before we contact authorities or involve any external parties, I want to ensure everyone is safe and stable. She gestures toward the door. Would you like the counselor to sit with Noah? I shake my head. No. He stays with me. Then I look at Kyle. Until now, I hadn't examined his expression fully. But in this moment I see it, the terror of a child who has just discovered that everything he believed about safety and honesty has collapsed. The boy looks at his father like he is standing at the edge of a cliff he did not see coming. You always tell me, Kyle chokes out, to do the right thing, to own up, to be a man who doesn't run from mistakes. His father closes his eyes. I know, he whispers. And you didn't do it. I know, he repeats, his voice cracking open. Why? The boy asks, the question trembling in the air like a wounded bird. Why didn't you stay? Why didn't you help him? Why didn't you help us? There is a pain in that us that hits harder than any accusation. I was scared, the man breathes. I was so scared I couldn't think. I panicked. I made the worst choice of my life. Kyle shakes his head, stepping back. That's not what you taught me. A single teardrop falls off his chin and splashes on the carpet. I thought you were brave, he whispers. I thought you were good. A sound leaves Mr. Thompson's throat, a low broken noise that doesn't belong to a grown man. Kyle, he says, reaching out. But the boy retreats further, folding his arms across his chest like he's trying to protect himself. You hurt him, Kyle says. And then I hurt him too. The room goes still. Because the cycle just revealed itself. Pain passed from father to son. Wounds passed from one generation to another. Violence learned in the quiet spaces. I'm not a monster, Noah whispers suddenly, the words trembling out of him. You called me one. Kyle's face collapses inward. The shame blooming on him is almost too heavy to watch. I know, he says, voice cracking. I didn't know you were real. Noah frowns. I am real. I didn't mean it like that, Kyle stammers. I meant, I thought you hid your arm because you wanted to be mysterious or cool or something stupid. A pained laugh escapes him, hollow and trembling. I didn't know you were hiding something you got from a night like that. Noah looks down at his feet. I don't want to hide forever. There is a tremor in his voice, the sound of a boy who has been carrying a weight too big for his shoulders. Then slowly he lifts his head. I don't want people to be scared of me, he says softly. I don't want kids to look at me like I'm wrong. Something breaks inside me hearing that. Something breaks inside Kyle too. The boy's face contorts with remorse. I was wrong, Kyle whispers. Noah studies him for a long second. You were mean, he says. I know. You hurt me. I know. And you didn't stop even when I said no. Kyle's voice collapses into a whisper. I know. There is a pause, heavy but not final. Not yet. You learned that from him, Noah says suddenly, surprising even me. Both Thompsons freeze. What do you mean? Kyle asks. You only push people when you don't know how else to feel, Noah murmurs. My mom says that. Kids push when something's pushing them. Kyle stares confused. What's pushing you? Noah asks softly. Kyle opens his mouth but nothing comes out. Then his eyes land on his father. And suddenly the whole room understands. A different kind of silence falls then. Full of revelation. Full of painful clarity. Full of the kind of vulnerability boys are rarely taught to name. Behind me, I hear the faint sound of another bell ringing. School ending, children spilling into hallways. Laughter bouncing off lockers. But inside this office something else is ending. A lie. A legacy. A cycle. Finally, Mr. Thompson inhales deeply, wiping his face with both hands. I know what has to happen now, he says quietly, looking at me. His voice has changed. It is no longer just the voice of a man confessing. It is the voice of a man preparing to surrender. To the police, he says. To the law. To whatever consequences should have found me years ago. He swallows. I won't run anymore. Mrs. Jenkins lets out a slow breath of relief and fear. Kyle's breath hitches. Noah stares at the floor, lost in thought. And I try to steady myself as the turning point arrives fully into view, the moment where the past stops being a shadow and becomes something we finally have the ability to face. When a truth this large enters your life, it does not pass through like a visitor. It stays. It sits. It expands. It tries on every corner of your mind like an old coat that fits differently depending on how you move. That afternoon, as the school emptied and the echo of children's, each of us began drifting into a quiet that did not feel like peace. Mrs. Jenkins arranged to have someone escort Kyle outside, away from his trembling father, who needed a moment to gather the parts of himself that had scattered across the room. But Kyle didn't follow easily. He walked out slowly, head down, looking like he had just watched a hero crumble into someone he didn't know how to protect. When the door shut behind him, the room felt lopsided. Like the absence of the boy had created a hollow space inside all the remaining ones. Noah sat beside me, still clutching my sleeve, still shaking faintly. I brushed my hand across his hair, trying to keep him anchored to something that did not feel like shifting earth. His breathing had steadied, but his eyes were too wide, too bright, like glass that had been heated then suddenly cooled. He had learned something too big today. Something a 12-year-old should never learn, that monsters don't always hide under beds. Sometimes they live in the houses next door. Sometimes they wear ties and drive carpools. Sometimes they look like heroes to their sons. Mr. Thompson leaned back in his chair and covered his face with both hands. His shoulders rose and fell in a rhythm that was too fast, too uneven. It was the rhythm of a man drowning in the memory of a single night that had rewritten the entire architecture of two families. Outside the window, a group of children raced across the playground, shouting triumphantly as they chased a stray soccer ball. The normalcy of it felt cruel, like the world was determined to remind us that most people get to move through days without the weight of this kind of history. I should have told someone years ago, Mr. Thompson whispered finally, lowering his hands. The guilt. It swallowed me, but I still hid it. I kept going. I kept pretending life hadn't stopped at that moment. His voice cracked as he stared at the floor. I thought becoming a surgeon would make up for it. I thought saving others was a kind of payment. It's not, I said quietly. The words weren't cruel. They were just true. Saving lives doesn't erase the one you broke. He nodded, accepting the truth like a blow. I know that now. Silence stretched out again, long and thin. I could feel Noah's breath against my arm. He was listening to every word, absorbing it quietly, filing it somewhere inside himself. Children remember the things we wish they wouldn't. Mrs. Jenkins stood slowly. I'm going to give you all a moment, she said, her voice trembling. I'll step outside. Let me know when you're ready to continue. She slipped out, closing the door with the gentlest click possible, like she feared making noise inside a sacred moment. And then it was just us. The mother, the child, the man who created the scars, and the truth that hovered between us, too large to hold, too heavy to set down. For a long time none of us spoke. Then in a voice barely louder than the hum of the heating vent, Noah whispered, "Why did it happen?" Mr. Thompson looked up slowly, like someone rising from deep water. Noah's eyes fixed on his. There was no hatred in them, no rage, just raw confusion, swollen with innocence and betrayal. Why did the car crash? He pressed. Why did you hit us? The question was too big for him to hold, but he asked it anyway. It was late, the man said, his voice raw with regret. I had been at a conference. I was tired. I closed my eyes for a second, just a second, and the wheel slipped. He shook his head. I didn't see the car in time. I didn't see you in the back seat. I didn't see anything I should have seen. Noah swallowed hard. His fingers tightened on my sleeve. And you didn't stay? That question tremored through the room. The man's breath shuddered. No, I didn't. You left me, Noah whispered. His voice broke. You left me in the fire. Mr. Thompson's face twisted, collapsing under the weight of words his heart had never been strong enough to hear out loud. I know, he breathed. I know I did. And I've never forgiven myself for it. Not for one day. He pressed a hand to his forehead, as if trying to smother the memory. When they pulled you out. He looked at me, eyes filled with something too shattered to name. When I saw your son on my table, I knew those burns were mine. And I told myself that maybe if I saved him, maybe if I gave him another chance, maybe the universe would let me live long enough to fix what I'd broken. A tear slid down his cheek, followed by another, then another. But you weren't fixing, Noah said suddenly. His voice was small, quiet, true. You were hiding. The man flinched like he'd been struck. Yes, he whispered. I was hiding. From me. No, he looked up, meeting Noah's eyes fully. From myself. There was a kind of painful honesty in that admission, like a broken bone finally set straight, even though the healing would hurt. Noah looked toward the window, blinking, thinking. I was scared in the fire, he said, voice trembling. I thought I was going to die. Each syllable was a small wound reopening. I know, the man whispered. And I didn't understand why you weren't there. His voice cracked again, thinner this time, like the last threads of a rope giving way. You were the grown-up, Noah said. Grown-ups are supposed to help kids. The man swallowed a sob. His hands shook uncontrollably. You're right, he said. You're absolutely right. A tear dropped onto his knee. And I failed you. I pulled Noah into my side, partly to comfort him, partly to keep myself from falling apart. You didn't fail me in the surgery room, Noah whispered. You saved me. The man's shoulders shook. I know. But you failed me before. The boy fell into the room with the heaviness of a stone sinking to the bottom of a lake. The man nodded, not defensively, not reluctantly, but with the kind of surrender that comes only when there's nothing left to protect. I can't ask you to forgive me, he said quietly. I can't ask anything of you. Not after what I did. He looked up, eyes soaked and empty. But I can tell the truth now. I can finally do what I should have done that night. Noah looked at me. His eyes were bright with pain, but also something else. Something softer, something stubbornly hopeful. What happens now? He asked. The question fell on me like a weight I wasn't sure I could lift. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Because what did happen now? Did I call the police? Did I demand justice? Did I drag us back into a courtroom, into lawyers, into paperwork and statements and nights where sleep would be eaten by fear all over again? Did I want revenge? Healing? Clarity? Peace? I didn't know. I didn't know anything. And that realization was terrifying. Mr. Thompson stood slowly, as if his bones were made of ash. I'm turning myself in, he said. Tonight. Noah stiffened against me. No, the man added quickly, shaking his head. I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you what's already decided. I can't walk back into my home and pretend life is normal. Not after this. His eyes darkened with resolve. I will report the accident, he said. I will give a full statement. Whatever the law decides. I accept. The clarity in his voice was startling. Not courageous, not heroic, just final. And Kyle? I asked softly. His face broke again. I will explain everything, he whispered. Not with excuses. With truth. For the first time there was something like strength in his posture. Not the strength of a man who never bends, but the strength of a man who finally stops pretending he isn't already broken. And Noah, he breathed, looking at my son, eyes trembling. I don't expect forgiveness. Not today. Not ever. But I want you to know. You are not a monster. My son's breath caught. You never were. The words hung in the air like a blessing he could never give himself. I wrapped my arms tighter around Noah, feeling his small body soften into me, the exhaustion of years of hiding starting to loosen its grip. The door opened softly then, and Mrs. Jenkins re-entered the room with hesitant steps. Are we ready? She asked gently. No one answered immediately, because ready was a word none of us had earned. But the truth was here now, and refusing to move. And the only thing left for any of us to do was decide what shape our lives would take around it. The minutes after a confession are strange things. They stretch, warp, and pull apart the hours around them, leaving everything off, kids laughing in the hallways, buses honking in the parking lot, teachers shuffling stacks of graded papers. But for the four of us in that office, time behaves differently. Feels cautious, hesitant, like it's waiting to see what we'll do next before it decides whether to keep going. When we finally step out of the room, it feels as though we are stepping onto a stage where the rest of the world has been watching without knowing the script. The hallway is empty, the walls plastered with paintings of trees and planets and bright impossible colors that children choose when they still believe the world is mostly good. The secretary glances up as we pass, smiling politely until she sees our faces. My swollen eyes, Noah's tear-stained cheeks, the hollow grief carved into Mr. Thompson's features. Her smile falters into a stunned silence, but she doesn't ask questions. Some moments tell you not to speak. Mrs. Jenkins walks beside us, hands clasped, shoulders heavy with the knowledge that she has witnessed something she can't categorize in any training manual. She stops near the exit. I'll finalize the incident report, she murmurs. Take whatever time you need. And I'm so sorry for all of this. Her voice cracks on the last word. Then she looks at Noah with the tenderness of a grandmother. You're incredibly brave, she tells him. More than you know. Noah's eyes lower, shy and unsure, but I can feel the small, fragile lift in his breath, the first hint that bravery can live inside quiet children too. When we step outside, the sky has dimmed to that early evening blue where daylight begins surrendering, but the night hasn't claimed the world yet. Streetlights blink awake one by one, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Kyle is standing with a school counselor near the far wall, his hands in his pockets, kicking at gravel. He looks smaller than before, as if guilt has made him shrink. When he sees us, he straightens, uncertain, scared. The counselor nods, stepping back to give space that neither boy knows how to fill. For a moment, no one moves. Then Kyle walks toward Noah in slow, cautious steps, like someone approaching a skittish animal. I want to gather Noah into my arms and shield him from further hurt, but something in my son's posture keeps me still. He is bracing himself, not to hide but to listen. I'm sorry, Kyle says quietly, voice trembling. For real this time. I didn't know. I didn't understand what you were carrying. Noah shifts uncomfortably. You didn't have to know, he whispers. You just had to not be mean. The bluntness lands between them like a lesson neither boy can ignore. Kyle nods. Hard. I know. And I was mean. Really mean. And I won't be anymore. He glances down at the pavement. Ever. The sincerity in his voice is strange and new. It has a weight to it that wasn't there before, the weight of a boy who has seen his father fall and realized cruelty has consequences. Noah stays quiet for a long moment. Then he looks up, eyes softening. Okay, he murmurs. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But permission to try again. It is more powerful than anything I could have taught him. Mr. Thompson watches from a few feet away. His face folds with something like gratitude and heartbreak woven into one. He doesn't approach yet. He knows this moment belongs to the boys. When the counselor leads Kyle away to wait for his mother, the boy looks back once, not with the arrogance he carried earlier, but with quiet remorse. Then the door shuts behind him. The air shifts. Now it is just the three of us again. Me, Noah, and the man who carries the weight of the fire. I need to take you home, I tell Noah softly. He nods, weary. And you, I say, turning to Mr. Thompson, need to figure out how to tell your family what really happened. He inhales sharply. It's obvious he's been dreading that part even more than the police, more than the law, more than anything else. The truth may terrify him, but the idea of losing Kyle, that is the wound he fears most. His voice comes out in a whisper. I don't know how to start. Start by telling the truth, I say. For once. For real. He nods slowly. Then he does something unexpected. He reaches into his coat pocket and pulls out his car keys. But instead of holding them, he places them gently on the curb beside him. I won't drive today, he murmurs. Not like this. I'm not stable enough. I'll call a ride. Or walk. For the first time I see the full weight of his resolve. The man who once ran from a fire is refusing to run from its aftermath. Noah, he says softly, turning to my son, I want you to hear something before you go. My son tenses. But the man doesn't reach for him. He doesn't move closer. He simply lowers his voice to something steady, something honest. You deserve a good life, he says. Not in spite of your scars, but with them. They show you survived something impossible. That you're still here. That you're stronger than the rest of us combined. Noah's eyes blur again. You're not broken, the man continues. You're a miracle. And you don't need my forgiveness to prove that. You don't need anyone's. Noah wipes his face with the back of his sleeve. Why are you saying that? He whispers. The man swallows, eyes filling again. Because I lived 6 years trying to pretend your survival didn't affect me. But it did. Changed everything. And I want you to know, before I face the consequences, that saving you was the only moment in my life where I felt like I became the man I should have been sooner. He falters. Then gathers himself. And hurting you was the moment I failed to be that man. The wind shifts, carrying the faint smell of rain on asphalt. Young and old at once. I don't hate you, he says suddenly. The man's body jolts like the words hit him physically. Noah shrugs, looking down again. I don't like what you did. But I don't hate you. A sound escapes the man's throat. A small strangled cry of disbelief. He nods, unable to speak. Then Noah takes my hand, tugging lightly. Can we go home now? Yes, I whisper. Yes, love. We can. As we walk toward the car, I feel the man's gaze on our backs. Not begging. Not pleading. Just watching. Just witnessing the boy he once saved after almost destroying him. When I open the car door, Noah slides into the passenger seat slowly, his movements stiff with the exhaustion of too many truths in one day. Before I close the door, I look back. Mr. Thompson is still standing there, unmoving, the streetlights casting long shadows behind him. He looks like a man suspended in the space between punishment and redemption, unsure which direction the world will allow him to walk. I don't say anything. Neither does he. Some silences are truer than words. When I start the engine, Noah leans his head against the window. As I pull out of the parking lot, I catch a final glimpse of the man. He kneels on the pavement. Not dramatically. Not theatrically. Just quietly. A man finally surrendering to everything he's run from. And in that moment, for the first time, he looks like someone who might be capable of change. Not because the world demands it, but because his son's eyes demanded it. We drive away, leaving the school behind us, the truth lingering in the rearview mirror like a shadow that will follow us for the rest of our lives. But something else is there too. Faint, fragile, impossible. A hint of the light that comes after smoke. There are days that carve themselves into memory with a blade so sharp you don't feel the cut until hours later. That evening, when I brought Noah home from school, the world felt strangely suspended, as if time had stretched thin from the weight of what the afternoon had revealed. The house greeted us with familiar quiet, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the old living room clock, the faint smell of the lavender candle I had burned the night before. Ordinary things. Safe things. And yet everything felt different, as if the walls themselves sensed the truth we carried inside us. Noah dropped his backpack near the couch and went straight to his room without a word. He didn't shut the door, but he didn't open it wide either. It stood halfway, a silent negotiation between wanting company and needing space. I let him be, knowing grief had its own gravity, and children needed time to learn the shape of it inside their chests. In the kitchen, I filled a glass with water but didn't drink it. My hands trembled around it. The shock had settled, but the ache was beginning to bloom. The confession was real now, solid, undeniable. I could no longer hide behind the blurred lines of the past. I knew the face of the man who had changed our lives. I had looked into his eyes as he admitted the truth, and he was going to turn himself in. The weight of that decision pulled at me like a tide. Before I could sit down, Noah appeared quietly at the doorway. "Mom," he said, voice soft and too old for his small frame. "Yes, love. Can we talk?" The water glass remained on the counter as I followed him to the living room. He curled onto the couch, legs folded up, hoodie sleeves pulled over his hands. His hair fell into his eyes and I brushed it back gently. He looked at me, the confusion of a bruised childhood swirling in his gaze. "Why did he save me?" he asked. The question hit deep. It wasn't about the surgery. It was about the contradiction. The boy couldn't reconcile the man who hurt him with the man who stitched him whole. "He saved you," I said softly, "because people can be broken and still do one thing right. Sometimes the thing that terrifies them most is the thing they try hardest to fix." He nodded slowly, thinking. "Do you hate him?" he asked. The answer rose in my chest, surprising me. "I don't hate him," I said. "I hate what he did. I hate the years you carried pain you didn't understand. I hate the fear. I hate the scars. But the man." I took a breath. "No, I don't hate him. If I did, I would have thrown him to the police right there in the office." Noah's eyes widened slightly. "You didn't?" "No," I whispered. "Not yet." "Why not?" I shook my head. "Because sometimes the truth itself is heavier punishment than the law." Today was the first time he looked at what he did without running. Noah rested his head on my shoulder. "Will he be okay?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But he's finally doing what's right. And you helped him do that." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. His fingers tightened around my sleeve, grounding himself in the moment. For a while we stayed like that, mother and son wrapped in the twilight of truth, each breathing their way into healing. But in another home, one only a few streets away, there was a different storm unfolding. Mr. Thompson walked up the wooden steps of his house with a slowness that betrayed fear, fatigue, and the weight of a confession he could no longer put off. His keys jingled in his hand, but he didn't unlock the door immediately. He stood there, staring at the faded welcome mat, the potted plant his wife had insisted on buying, the porch light that flickered every other night. Ordinary things. Safe things. Things that suddenly felt like fragile lies. Inside, through the window, he could see the glow of the living room lamp and the silhouette of his wife moving between the kitchen and the hallway. She was carrying a laundry basket, something he had promised to fix, something he had forgotten, something small and harmless. When he finally stepped inside, she looked up, startled by the tears that clung to his face. "What happened?" she asked, setting the basket down. "You look," she paused. "Mark, what's wrong?" He closed the door behind him gently, like he feared any loud noise might shatter everything. "Kyle's home?" he asked quietly. "In his room," she said. "The school called. They said there was a conflict. They didn't give details. I've been waiting for you to explain." He nodded slowly. His legs nearly gave way. He sat down on the nearest chair, head in his hands. "Mark," she repeated, panic rising. "You're scaring me." He lifted his head, eyes red, face drained. "I need to tell you the truth. he said. Something I should have told you 6 years ago. Her breath caught. She sank into the chair across from him, watching the man she trusted unravel. He told her everything. The conference. The exhaustion. The moment the wheel drifted. The sickening crunch of metal. The smoke. The screams. The panic. The running. The fire that swallowed the night. The surgery. The lie. The years of silence. The boy with the scars. The school meeting. The moment truth finally cornered him. When he finished, the house was so quiet he could hear the clock ticking on the wall. His wife didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't scream. She simply stared at him with a hollowness he had never seen in her eyes. 6 years, she whispered finally. 6 years, Mark. And you never told me. I was scared, he said, voice breaking. She scoffed, a sound halfway between disbelief and pain. Scared. She stood abruptly. You let your son grow up learning how to hide, how to lie, how to run from responsibility, and you call that being scared? He swallowed. I didn't mean. No, she snapped, her voice cracking. You don't get to talk about meaning. You did this. You hurt that boy. You hurt our son. And you hurt me. All because you were too afraid to face what you did. She turned away from him, wiping her eyes. I'm turning myself in, he said quietly. Tonight. She froze. When she turned back, some of the anger had melted into something else. Grief, disappointment, fractured love. Do you understand what you're risking? She asked softly. Your career. Your freedom. Everything. Yes, he said. For the first time. I understand exactly what I'm risking. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Why now? Why today? He hesitated. Because our son bullied a boy who carries my scars. Because Kyle learned cruelty from my silence. Because the boy I nearly killed grew up thinking he needed to hide his pain. And because when that child looked at me today, I saw the truth in his eyes. I saw what I had done. Pain eyes. I don't know, she whispered. But I know you have to do what's right. Finally. He nodded. When he went to Kyle's room, the boy sat on his bed, knees pulled up to his chest, staring at the floor. Dad, Kyle said, voice shaky. Are you in trouble? Yes, he answered honestly. Because of what you told them? Yes. Kyle blinked. Are you going to jail? I might, his father whispered. The boy's face contorted. I don't want you to go. I know, the man said, sitting beside him. But I need to tell the truth, so you grow up knowing how to face your mistakes. Not run from them. Tears filled the boy's eyes. I'm scared. So am I, the father said. But we can't keep hiding from our fear. It will turn us into people we're not meant to be. Kyle wiped his face with the back of his sleeve. Dad, he whispered. If you go, can you still come home one day? The man placed a trembling hand on his son's back. I'll come home, he choked out. I promise. A promise made from a man who finally understood what truth required. Meanwhile, in our home, Noah lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, breathing slowly, letting the weight of the world settle over him like a blanket he was learning to adjust to. When I walked over to check on him, he whispered, Mom. Yes. Can I sleep in your room tonight? I smiled softly. Of course. He curled into me, small and tired and brave, and I knew something had changed in him today. Not broken, not erased, but shifted. He wasn't hiding anymore. Not fully. Not like before. His scars had entered the light. And somehow he hadn't disappeared. As we drifted toward sleep, I thought about the man across town, preparing to surrender to consequences he had avoided for too long. Pain had traced a path between our families long before our sons faced each other. But now, truth was beginning to rewrite that path. Slowly. Painfully. Honestly. The night ended quietly. But the world had already changed. And the dawn that waited for us would not be the same as the day we left behind. Dawn came softly the next morning, painting our house in gray-blue light that didn't belong to any season. It was the kind of morning that followed a storm. Not loud, not triumphant, but subdued, as though even the sun understood it needed to tread lightly. I found Noah already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal untouched in front of him. His eyes were distant, like he was visiting a place inside himself that didn't have names yet. Couldn't sleep. I asked gently. He shook his head. Too many thoughts. About yesterday? He nodded. I sat beside him. The soft hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. Sometimes the world tries to heal you with the smallest sounds, asked suddenly, looking up with fear in his voice. Did I cause any of this? The question was so heavy it cracked something inside me. No, I said firmly, taking his hands in mine. None of this is your fault. Not the accident. Not the scars. Not the bullying. Not the truth coming out. None of it belongs to you. He swallowed hard. Then why does it feel like it does? Because you're the one who's lived with it the longest, I whispered. And because pain makes itself at home in us when it shouldn't. He nodded slowly. Then, what's going to happen to him? To Kyle's dad. The truth sat on my tongue like a stone. He's going to turn himself in today. Noah absorbed this, shoulders rising and falling. Will he go to jail? He asked quietly. Maybe. And is that good? Or bad? I hesitated. I think it's honest, I said finally. And honesty is good, even when it hurts. Noah didn't move for a long moment. Then he whispered, I don't want him to disappear forever. That surprised me. Why not? I asked softly. He fiddled with the hem of his sleeve. Because he saved me. And he hurt me. And I don't know how to feel about that. But if he disappears, I won't get to understand any of it. Children understand more than the world assumes. Understanding takes time, I murmured. We'll take it together. He leaned into my side and for a moment the world felt still. Later that morning my phone buzzed with a call from an unfamiliar number. I hesitated then answered. Hello. A quiet voice replied. It's Mark Thompson. I felt my breath catch. Are you okay? As okay as a man can be the morning after telling the truth, he said. His voice was tired, stripped of pretense. I'm on my way to the station. I wanted to tell you before I go. A long silence filled the line. Thank you, I said softly. For what? For not running again. He exhaled shakily. My son asked me last night what kind of man I want him to become. His voice wavered. I told him I want him to become better than me. And he looked at me and said, Then show me how. My chest tightened. So I'm showing him, he whispered. Even if it costs me. There are moments where a man stops being the sum of his mistakes and becomes the sum of his choices. This was his moment. Do you need anything? I asked quietly. No, he said. Just tell Noah I'm glad he lived. And I'm sorry he had to carry my shadow. I will. And one more thing, he added. I saw your strength yesterday. I saw how you guided him. I saw how you held him. You didn't just save his life that night. You saved it every day after. The word stunned me. Goodbye, he whispered. Then the line went silent, at the failure to render aid. Obstruction by omission. Years of silence. The officers listened, stunned. Cases like this didn't walk through the doors wrapped in regret and honesty. It made the news briefly, a small local segment about a doctor confessing to an accident from years ago. But they didn't mention names. Didn't mention children. Didn't mention scars. Some truths don't belong to everyone. Some belong only to those who lived them. Days became weeks. Noah returned to school cautiously, walking slower, watching the world with eyes that now understood people could hold both light and darkness inside them. Kyle kept his distance at first, not out of fear but out of respect. Something in him had shifted too. He no longer walked with the loud, careless swagger of boys who think cruelty is currency. He walked quieter now, more aware, more human. He raised his hand in class without needing attention. He stopped traveling in packs. He apologized to other kids, not with dramatic gestures, but with small, painfully sincere ones. One afternoon, I picked Noah up from school and found the two boys walking side by side. Not close, not friends yet, but sharing the same path. When Noah climbed into the car, he buckled his seatbelt and said, "We talked today." "What about?" "Nothing big," he shrugged. "Just stuff. Classes. The science fair." It felt normal. And how did that feel? He thought for a long moment. Then, "Good," he said softly. It felt good. Something delicate and hopeful opened in my chest. Meanwhile, across town, Mark Thompson attended hearings, stood before judges, completed evaluations, and face consequences that had been waiting 6 years for him. He didn't hide. He didn't minimize. He didn't run. In court, he asked to make a statement. The judge allowed it. He stood there, shoulders squared but trembling slightly, and said, "I don't ask for leniency. I ask for responsibility. I can't change the night I destroyed a family's peace. I can only honor the boy who lived by refusing to hide from what I did any longer." He was sentenced. Not lightly, not cruelly, fairly, and something inside him changed, not broken by punishment but reshaped by truth. Months later, on an early spring afternoon, Noah and I were walking home from the corner store when a familiar car slowed beside us. Kyle's mother stepped out, face soft with tired kindness. She approached us cautiously. "Hi," she said gently. "I hope this isn't a bad time." "It's okay," I replied. She looked at Noah then, her eyes welling. "I need to say something to you," she told him. He looked uncertain but nodded. "My husband made choices that hurt you and hurt us," she whispered. "And I'm sorry. For everything. For the fear. For the lies. For the pain you lived with because of someone else's mistake." Noah swallowed. "It wasn't your fault," he said quietly. She covered her mouth, tears spilling. "Thank you," she whispered. "And," Noah hesitated, "I don't want your family to be broken because of me." Her breath stopped. She crouched slightly, meeting his eyes. "No," she said, shaking her head firmly. "Your family isn't responsible for ours. What happened was because of choices we made. And we will heal from it. Just like you will." He nodded, unsure but accepting. Then she looked at me. "If you ever want to talk," she murmured, "I'm here." She returned to her car, leaving a small trail of hope behind her. That night, Noah and I sat outside on the porch, wrapped in a blanket as the first warm breeze of spring brushed against us. "Mom," he whispered. "Yes. Do scars ever stop hurting?" I thought about it, the physical kind, the emotional kind, the scars inside the man who drove away, inside the boy who bullied, inside the mother who held a child through flames, inside the child who lived them. "No," I answered softly. "They don't stop hurting." He leaned into me. "But," I added, "one day, they stop being the first thing you think about when you wake up." He was quiet for a moment. "Do you think that will happen to me?" "Yes," I whispered. "I do. Because you're brave. And you're healing. And you're not alone." He nodded, letting his head rest on my shoulder. The stars shimmered faintly above us. The world had changed. We had changed. And truth, the kind that wounds and heals, had finally found a place to land. The past no longer chased us. The present no longer frightened us. And the future, for the first time, felt possible. My son's scars terrified his bully. But they destroyed the bully's father. Because he recognized the flames that created them. I used to think scars were reminders of the night we almost lost everything. Now I know they are reminders of the night we didn't. Because truth, no matter how late it arrives, is still truth. And sometimes the people who break us are the same people who show us how far we've come. That's the strange thing about healing. It never changes the past, but it changes what the past turns us into. For my son, for that man, for all of us, the scars didn't disappear, but the fear did. And the truth, once it finally found us, became the very thing that allowed us